How's it going?
It's going. It's been going. I've been pretty busy. Uh, yeah, it's going. But I was just on a gaming break playing Doom: The Dark Ages, and that's been pretty. It's been pretty metal to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never play games anymore. Like,
Well, what do you used to play?
well, see, I mean, I spent 9 years making and shipping video games, so I kind of
Oh yeah, yeah. You don't shit where you eat sort of situation. So
right. I mean, so I played Tiger all day long when I was shipping Tiger because of a. It's interesting to golf games are a very interesting game from a. There's a we had primarily on TWO most of our whale users were all business people. They would
that's
play when
hilarious.
they would play when they got into the office, they would play on their lunch break, and then they would continue playing when they got home, and this is what makes
That's
TWO
hilarious.
unique, right? You couldn't do that on a console game, and this is pre-mobile. So and that like, that ability to just, like, say, "You know what? I need to check out for a minute," and just pick up your game, work through a couple of holes, maybe a couple of courses, right? Play a tournament, and then just go back. It's you can like experiencing that for 4 years. I realized that I could see the appeal of the golf course just from that brain disconnection,
Yeah.
but without the intensity of most video games.
Correct.
You know,
I mean, I have a lot of qualms with golf, from a sociocultural and economic perspective, but I can definitely relate to the sense of like, hey, I just need to go somewhere and disconnect, right? Because golf
right?
can mean a lot of things, especially to the kinds of people who play golf. It's like it's the only time you're really outside of the office is not an outside doing anything that is very, very simple, right? Um, hold on, my kid's saying hi. Hello. Um, But, uh but yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about my own gaming, right? It's like it's my way to disconnect and just be a dude, do something else that I find remotely exciting, whether it's some sort of power fantasy or, I don't know, mostly power fantasies to be honest, but
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yep.
hence the Dark Ages. So, um, so yeah, right now I'm just killing demons and saving the planet from utter destruction.
Yep. So the fractional work has been keeping you busy.
Yeah, very busy. Some things that I didn't expect to come through came through.
Good.
Some of them were like, "Hey, we just really need someone to build a platform," and I was like, "All right, this is great." Um, and I got a pretty good deal flow going on. And hi, Steven.
Steven.
And so yeah, like things are well, things are well.
This
So I have a little bit more than I know what to do with right now, but
good
just
problem to
just
have.
trying to push my managerial systems to their limit and see where they take me.
Awesome. Make sure you keep in there. Make sure you keep the continued part of the deal flow, right? You got to keep talking to people so that more work lands down the road, or you charge enough now that you can have a big gap, which, who does that?
Yeah, I'm at a point where I might actually start having like a waiting list, uh, which is like wow to say because I am very busy and I'm like, man, this guy just called me for like a simple AdWords project, but I don't think I have the time for that, you know.
Take take the
I
high
really
value stuff. Cha Take the high value stuff,
yeah
raise your prices on the high value stuff, and let the smaller deals that aren't worth it, let those sit on the side, come in as filler later or whatever, right? You can follow back up with them when you have a gap, but you don't have to take those.
yeah, that's where I'm at. I have a lot of like little not a lot, but I do have like a few like small time clients that don't have like a lot of needs, so the retainer's really small. So I kind of just keep pushing them in the back burner while all the big stuff is happening. So I am certainly the more I talk about it, the more I notice that this is just kind of part of the growing pains of just you know having a production line and yeah,
Yeah, good stuff
I'm
though.
doing it.
Yeah.
Beginning of the year, I was just like, I just started. What's up, David? And then David's like, you need to do value based. And I was like, you're right. And yeah, here we are. Here we are fighting for my life.
The power the power of one conversation.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to get everyone in the fractional T now that I'm just like, "Hey, you sound like you wanna do really high value work and you're really good at what you do. You should just call yourself a fractional." You know? I'm getting everyone in the T just because, not because like, I'm so any sort of fanatic, but just because it just works. The positioning works wonderfully when you're
Yes.
the type of person that just wants to deliver strategic value, right? So, that's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Steven, how's
Uh,
it going?
uh, still alive.
I
Uh, is it good? I don't know. I mean, you know how Americans are, we always say, "Oh, it's great. You know, everything's fine." And you smile, and you're like, "I'm dying inside." Right? Like, no, everything's fine.
I don't know. I think the DevOps version of that is always, I'm still alive.
Yeah, it's still alive. You know, like even hearing Livio like say that, like the just wait till you like start doing delivery or something. That if you can keep it value based and strategy, but it's a whole different deal if you start delivering and all that
It
kind of
really
thing.
is. It really
It really is
it
different.
makes it so much so much
Yeah,
more work. I mean, let's face
yeah,
it.
and also
What do you
like
mean by delivery? Like,
delivery means like doing well. This is tricky, right? I think most people like even with customers they don't get that, but delivery means like I'll tell you what your strategy should be, and then I'm gonna do it for you. So like you should pick a cloud provider or like I don't know what it is. You should rewrite all your services in Rust, and then you say, and then we're gonna do that for you. And then you
oh yeah,
you
no,
you
I
write
know.
the Rust code. Yeah, that's
Yeah, no, that's
delivery.
that's grueling. It's probably the most grueling part of the work. Uh, I absolutely, yeah. I have some work with that too. So,
I like how you
uh,
qualified it like it's the grueling part. Well, I don't think like that. I think that's the part that is the work. The part about the strategy is a different kind of work. So
yeah,
that's the whole thing. So there's consulting. I think more efficient. This is why it's interesting to hear what David thinks too. Like it's new for people because we didn't slice and dice, but consulting, more pure consulting now. A lot of people think you're doing contract work or something, but pure consulting is the strategic thing I think you were saying.
mhm,
Delivery is what I'm starting to say, and maybe that's I'm trying to really double down to really say that, but delivery just means like actual services based
yeah,
on like
production,
something to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
production, right?
production and development. Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
that's that's definitely like, I think the hardest part of that is finding time to do deep work when you got so much going on, because that's really a lot about deep work.
Oh, it
Um,
just means you're not doing that. Like, it's not finding time, you're just not doing delivery. Like, you could just do strategic consulting for sure. Um,
I
yeah.
mean, yes, you can. Unfortunately, my view of the market currently is that you've got a ton of customers, potential clients who are trying to compress and continue to favor that idea that consulting also means I'm a hands-on person. That's how they code it in the descriptions. Be like, well, are you hands-on?
Yeah, yet another hands-on. I mean,
I
last I
will
checked, there's
absolutely
no
get hands on and throttle the guy that needs to do the work that's not doing it.
Right.
yeah, or like hands-on, write out what needs to be done is very different than hands-on,
They
do the
There
the work.
this isn't new though. I mean, I've been
No.
doing this for a long time, and it's not new. It's always the desire. And this is why you hire employees too, right? Is when I hire an employee, I get that person I can tell what to do, and I can also every now and then listen to them tell me what we should do. And that's the relationship people want. It's not necessarily the one they need. And so they often wind up hiring people that are willing to let them be told what to do. And this is what happens when you bring in the contractor, the person who is the soloist, who is just there to do delivery, to be told what to do, right? And now you've got 3 or 5 or a whole agency full of these people. These people, I don't mean it like that. Um,
What do you mean these people?
Yeah,
these
who
people
are you calling us those
who are
people?
really good at sitting down and following directions and building the thing, or following minimal directions or whatever, but building the thing. But they're not good at pushing back and knowing that they should push back and say, no, that's not the thing you needed to build. Right. And
Yeah.
so we get companies that invest tons and tons and tons of money just running the wrong direction, building the wrong thing.
Mhm.
And that's the problem that on the strategic side we solve. The trick is waiting for them to either come to the realization they've spent all this money and they need direction, that they need help, or catching them early enough. And it's
I would say like what we're I'm finding is unique and is that we're strategic and can offer delivery. Like this is like a third like deeper thing. So
because
like
the space that you're in is the one space that everyone self-acknowledges they don't want to know anything about.
well, it's outcome
I mean,
based.
in the we build and run software side of things, no one wants to know why it works and how it works or why cloud.
Right. Well, what's the difference between what, say, Michael might do and what I might do is a company very deeply needs to understand why they're writing an application that is encoding their business value is their business versus these sort of bridges and tunnels and roads that those apps run on. They absolutely don't need to know. What we're coming out of is like almost 15 years where everyone fell in love with the problem of development operations where they thought all the engineers should be building the pipelines, but we kind of forgot that it's really more about the apps that you need on those pipelines. Like, I want a beer, and they started building breweries. This is the thing where I tell them, you do not want to build, we'll take over fractionally. We'll do all the DevOps, which is just horsepower and statics, right? Like we'll take care of all your operations and all the building of the pipelines. That will let you focus on what's going through those for your business.
Yeah.
David's right. You don't need to know anything about, well, they think that doing DevOps was building all the stuff, but really, if someone could come in and do it faster, more strategic, and better aligned, then you don't need all that DevOps team. But this
More
is really,
strategic.
this is really weird for people because they're like, I thought I needed a DevOps team. No, you just need a couple of really good people to build all that for you, and then that's it.
And then
Call
just
me if it breaks.
follow the pipeline. That's why it's called a pipeline.
I talked to a
It's like-
company years ago. I guess this was probably back in late 19, maybe early 2020, before things collapsed, before the end of the world. And they had 90 people in their DevOps team. They only had 150 developers in the entire. So of their 150 engineers, they had 90 DevOps people. And their general expectation was it took 6 to 9 months before any of those people could commit code to their infrastructure. And I'm like, you guys are broken. You've done it.
Are they?
You've done it the wrong way around.
They have, but there's billions of dollars spent telling them to do this. Like, the tool-based strategy, like
Sure.
all these startups, like I worked at a couple, like all you need is Kubernetes, Docker, Terraform. Yeah, like a strategy is not a bunch of tool names strung together, right? But then they said, okay, I hired 100 DevOps engineers to use all these tools.
Yep.
Now what? It's like that person's like, yeah.
So I once was on contract through a company, who I won't mention by name here, but I was brought in to help do some contract development for Johnson Controls Incorporated. And so what they were doing was, I mean, their security system, the software that runs the security systems that they put in place for all kinds of people is been around since the advent of .NET. It's been around since before that, but the latest iteration, .NET, right? And they wanted to modernize it and had some pretty specific requirements around it. But most of those requirements were in infrastructure because they're not necessarily able to completely reside in the cloud as a multi-tenant application due to some of their customers, potentially places like the Federal Reserve, being completely air-gapped. And so they need their software working in an air-gapped environment. And this contracting consulting firm brought in a bunch of people. It basically ended up being a staff augmentation project. And one of the teams they had was a bunch of people doing the infrastructure, and there was like 30 people on this team alone, right? Contracted to essentially build a setup coming off the code, the GitHub pipelines, where it pulls all that in and packages Terraform scripts to deploy into one big package. And the entire more than a year that I was working on that, right? They made zero progress in getting a final delivery product.
You put 30 people in a room, you're never going to get progress.
It amazed me that it just couldn't be done. To the client's eye, it could not be done.
Yeah.
This was an impossible ask they had.
Yeah.
And I was like, surely there must be a way. But I was over on the OAuth side and helping like the top developers figure out how to do how to revamp their data models. So I stayed away from that. And eventually, though, that right there, that whole unable to deliver the infrastructure and the pipelines for it, what caused an entire project to fail for that consulting firm.
Well, just now, coming out of the woods with like David said, the reckoning that happened, the failure, the collapse, whatever you want to, end of ZERP, whatever. Sounds like we were invaded by aliens, right? The ZERP has left us, right? The zero interest rate period. They've gone back to their planet, but the issue is
Constructed
that
additional pylons.
yeah, I've talked to many companies since this has happened, and there is a pretty common thread that they adopted DevOps, so specifically adopted a DevOps expert that took them down this path and blew a hole in the side of their company the size of 30, 90 engineers, right? Like, because the other thing is you get 30 DevOps engineers in a room and you have 90 different opinions. Like, what is happening, right? Like, so this is a real thing. This is more, I think that's why uniquely we sort of help with that strategic conversation, and then say also it's like, if we're saying it correctly, if we're saying it takes a lot less engineers and all that, and you shouldn't dual purpose all your app engineers, someone else could do that for you. That fractional takeover, then we could do for less work, less money, less people. It's compelling, or it should be. But we're fighting against everyone thinking that you need these big teams, and somehow the previous way we did it is how we got there. But I have no evidence that any of that worked, except that some very high performing organizations.
Yep.
I think a lot of the work as well, I mean, is also looking at team dynamics, right? This is a part of the strategic work. It's really a lot about looking at team dynamics and seeing what doesn't work, and having one big department usually for tech stuff that isn't like one-to-one work, like a lot of IT stuff, right? It's more about the scalable stuff. When you have too many people working on scalable stuff, you start entering into like a realm of chaos theory, and you don't really get anything done in chaos theory because
One
you're
of the
just
big challenges, I think one of the big challenges that happens when we talk about infrastructure and the system side of things, right, is that especially, and this is where it starts to fail with DevOps, is because of the dev part of DevOps, which I've finally adopted after years of fighting it, and realized that the reason we don't have DevOps without dev, right? So the dev part's important, but the dev isn't part of the job.
Yep.
So with that disconnect means that what happens is these people of whatever type, they could be software engineers, doesn't matter, right? DevOps people, sysadmins, software engineers, project managers, whatever, get slotted into this role of DevOps, and that whole thing becomes part of software development. And you can't develop infrastructure like you develop software. Even in in this modern era of API driven, blah, 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 blah. And I've built tons of API driven infrastructure and tons of software that builds that infrastructure. You can write the software like software, but you can't build infrastructure like software.
I mean, you could try, but
right.
The
you
problem is you could try.
And I mean, and there are exceptions, of course, right? Google is an exception. Google has managed to codify their infrastructure to the point where they think from the outside, it can look like we are building infrastructure with code. But that's not what actually happens, because there's still people slotting things in racks and doing manual steps that lead to that. You can, and then their software is their infrastructure platform, right? And that sits on top of the hardware. You always have to start at the hardware. You have to work your way back up from it. And until you can say, we are investing in that complete codification, and this is what Kubernetes pretends to be, right? Is that complete codification, but it's not. It's just a framework for you to build on.
Yep.
If
There's
you're
a
not
front.
investing in that building of
Here-
it, you don't get there. And you still got to have the other side. You've got the one side, the platform itself, and then the other. And this is why platform has grown now as the next
platform. Here, the biggest thing, like if we're squashing the infrastructure, like Google did it right, balloon, what they popped out when you push on one part of the balloon, this other thing ballooned, which is they call SRE.
Right.
And so, and also if you push on one part of DevOps, you get platform engineer. Like the thing is, like, the shape doesn't change. There's many ways to argue about this elephant, right? Like, but you can't. Here's the thing, I think, is the pathology that is bad that can happen is what they call a tool pathology, or what I call tool pathology. So there's one thing to say, we're using code to manage state, right? Which I think also is wrong. Well, depends on how you say it, but programming to get stable state is actually kind of diametrically opposed. And this is something not a lot of people are saying, but there's different approaches for things that need to be static versus applications. This is like a deeper conversation.
Yes.
But when we start talking about, I'm going to write you a program that allows you to ask complex questions from an API like Terraform or Kubernetes or things like this, these schedulers of the container, or even Docker itself. It's a way to write a tool that allows you to ask or get outcomes. The thing is, like, it's like saying, I want a cheeseburger. Just a second, let me write you a tool in Python that lets you order the cheeseburger. And then 6 years later, I never got the cheeseburger. We just felt like we were all working on the tool to get the cheeseburger, and no one ever got the cheeseburger. This is a pathology of tool building. But as tool builders, like some of my own friends that have built some of these big tools, it ends up being more about the tool than it is about the outcome. And this is dangerous. Plus, a second thing, like you going back to what you said, DevOps ended up not being a synergy between these different concerns of like shipping, innovation, and risk mitigation operations versus writing it. Ends up in the market turned into one engineer, two jobs.
Yes.
And what happened is operations has been buried in engineering. And people are realizing that's not maybe the best idea, because people who write apps, like Michael said, like, I'm over here writing the OAuth thing or .NET, and there's like this whole other thing. At least it was a separate team, so you could clearly see they were failing. If you take that DevOps team, merge that into just regular engineers, so I'm a Rust developer that half the day has to write infrastructure code,
and the other half
buried.
you're writing OAuth integrations.
Yeah, the failure gets buried in engineering of operations, and that's been hard to see for, I'd say, the last 5 or 6, 10 years maybe. Yeah, these are complex issues.
Because even simple project management, as we've defined it in software engineering today, always means sprints. We'll just call it sprint, right? Whatever you put around it, it's a sprint. Sprints don't work for infrastructure. They don't work for systems. They don't work when you're integrating 150, 250,000 pieces of software together on one machine, and then you've got another set of it you're doing on another machine.
Yeah, there's no clock there. There's no 2-week clock.
There's no predictability. There's no as much as we pretend that there's repetition, there is not repetition, because it's always changing. The surface area, the vector of we are touching all the time is changing every day, constantly. So we can't predict. And this is different than when you sit down and you're developing a feature inside a piece of software that you've already built, and you're doing another thing that's like another thing where you can predict and expect. You're going to have unknowns, but it's so much easier to predict how long it's going to take to write something this way.
I'm David, I'm sorry. I'm gonna disagree with you there.
Go for it.
I'm gonna agree with your overall point, right? And I'm gonna make a bold statement that I really hope causes your LinkedIn comments when this gets posted to blow up and all across the board. the agile mindset or the agile thing, the entire thing from manifesto forward is just about the worst thing that's ever happened to technology.
Oh, I agree completely.
I think a lot of people would agree. Capital A Agile, that most people would agree,
Yeah.
probably.
It is. I have had lengthy, and it's been a few years, but I've had lengthy discussions with a gentleman by the name of Richard Tunhausen, um, who runs a consulting firm, and he did a lot of talks at uh, the Visual Studio Live conferences, and he's a big Scrum advocate, and I always tried to talk to him about, because at the time, the CIO I worked with was just like not in favor of any of it. And I was trying to figure out how to move us towards something like that for better development. I was trying to solve a problem, and it seemed like Agile was the fit because of what everybody was talking about, right? And every time I brought up something, he would come back in the conversation, and we did this over chat, we did this over a bunch of different things, but um his answer was, well, if you don't want to do that, then don't do Agile. And I'm like, me as a student of human philosophy says
Nice.
that when you have a conflict, an argument, a discussion, doesn't even need to be severe, right? And the other party's response is to throw their hands up and walk away, right? You're whatever you're talking about is no solution. It's not the right. You got to reframe the entire thing, right? And that's what I've learned over the last 10 years with Agile is every single time I've seen it try to be implemented in any form, it's the leakiest of abstractions.
It's just like I'm to like I'm so glad you came with that perspective, because to me, right, there's two comparisons that I make to Agile. One is very personal, which is I compare it a lot to Mac Dojos, which are basically like for martial arts schools, like create a federation and then have their certifications and then just live on by giving certifications to other people, but they're not actually providing any real value to the martial arts world. Just putting up a lot of bullshit together and just calling it a framework or calling it a system.
Belt test.
Yeah, belt test, and that which is equates to the freaking pyramid scheme for certification. So that's I used to be like really obsessed with Agile and Scrum because I thought it was cool in concept. But then when I realized that nobody was actually doing Scrum or Agile, everyone was just doing just some version of Kanban or Waterfall, then I was just like, all right, then I guess it's bullshit. You know?
I for years have just called, and especially when I first got exposed to Agile, I called it fragile. And it's and it is, right? I mean,
effing Agile.
You back down to the core principles of, and this is various versions of Agile. Agile is a much bigger box than Scrum, but you know that if the plan that you have defined for your sprint can't be achieved, if you hit a blocker in there, you're supposed to burn it down and start over. So it is fragile, but right at that point, and then of course no one ever does that. They always just push ahead or scream about it or whatever, but that defeats all of the planning structure that's designed around this thing.
Well, I think the business, I think in that respect, exactly what you're talking about, the whole idea of you run into a big enough blocker or you run into a blocker, you're supposed to burn it all down and start over, is the thing that the manifesto never talked about, right? That people created as part of this leaky abstraction, right? They come across the question of, okay, so here's the manifesto. So I'm putting together a
I mean, that was Scrum.
Around...
I'm pretty sure that was Scrum. In that Scrum is where we derived sprints and everything else from.
Right.
And Scrum became the de facto Agile.
We built this system or these systems around these concepts, right? And then you run into these questions, right? Like, well, what happens if I can't proceed any further now on this particular thing? Burn it all down and start over is the answer, right? It's like, that is absolutely not going to be palatable to a business person,
Right.
right?
Well, yeah, that's definitely not the other one.
Regardless of our personal opinions on their susceptibility to the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like
Yes. Yes.
it's still not going to be palatable,
But
right?
But really,
Agile
what we're
and
all really
DevOps.
talking about is
Yeah.
you take the deliverable dates that you've put on paper and this short project plan, right? Because that's what they are, short project plans. And honestly, they're often short waterfalls. And say, okay, we stop now. We're not going to deliver this sprint. We are going to replan for a new sprint. That's what you're supposed to do. It's as simple as that.
Well,
But because deadlines are things that are a
yeah.
whole nother problem.
This is getting into the okay. So anything's it should be a big sign of a huge problem if the defense is I've never seen it work,
Yeah, yeah.
and the defense is well everyone's just not doing it quite right. You
Right.
could say the same thing about DevOps. This like right now I get people that I'm like maybe it's the tools, maybe it's something else, and they're like nope, everything's right about this. It's just we never really had the pure way implemented or we never did it right. This is never a good sign. It's like kind of
That's
saying like I have a perfect product that'll get you your thing, but you're just using it wrong. But if everyone has used it wrong and all that, it's a little hard to hold the mirror back up and say, look, maybe that's like
that's when you realize that the problem is not DevOps nor the platforms nor the software, but some decision maker out there who's obsessed with some framework or idea that is not fit for whatever it is they're doing.
I don't
So
I mean, I think
be
the- I
careful
think
because
the
now you're
biggest-
blaming them again. What I'm saying is maybe it is DevOps or Agile. It's just the problem. Maybe it didn't solve the problem. Like
I
we
think
keep
I think the
externally
big problem,
blaming.
though, I think the problem is that we have materially changed how we build and deliver software. And that is the big thing that we're still trying to come to terms with, even now. I mean, this has been a long time. We've stopped on a large scale we've stopped finishing software, right? We always knew the software was never finished, but we did hit a deliverable point and say, we've released version 1. We have released version 98. And we have moved. I mean, we see this even to the extreme with like CentOS streams, right? Where they've said, well, CentOS is no longer ever going to deliver a versioned product after this. It's just today's release. And we've done that now with the operating system, which is
Right.
awesome. Always been true for a long time if you look at Windows and Apple updates and stuff. But at least Apple still pretends that they have major versions changes, and Windows still pretends they have major version changes. But with most of the software, statistically, I think most of the software that we write today, that everyone writes today, there's never an expectation that it's done. It's just shipped and running, and then we're going to continue to iterate on it. Whereas we used to ship packaged software. I mean, the expectation when Photoshop 3 shipped was that this is it, right? Photoshop 3.0, man, this is awesome. It's amazing. Yeah, we're going to ship a 4.0 at some point, but project plan complete.
Yeah, but the difference was Photoshop 3, you know why when you said ship, I mean, literally, it was a date where there would be a disk put in a box.
Right.
This
Exactly.
is what's changed. Like now, I mean, my buddy, he's like head of design
And so we
for
start
Instagram.
planning
Yeah.
for Photoshop 4. Right?
Yeah, another box, but
Yeah.
it takes all that thing when we don't have the box anymore,
Yep.
but we carry over these things, right? Like it's funny you brought up Photoshop because also photos themselves and Photoshop itself is having this
I don't
problem
know.
about like it breaking these real
Because wasn't
things.
3.0, wasn't that Photoshop Deluxe? That
Yeah,
was
what I just mean is like photos themselves are also digital,
Yeah.
and the software that is editing is still in a box to not have a dark room. Now we're at the part where we don't have the box or the shipping the disk, but like this problem, there's some things that have happened that we haven't even, like you said, reconciled or even we're very naive. Like my buddy worked at Instagram and he did the redesign. And I met him like during that time and they had a lot of pushback or whatever. And he's like, we went to continuous. It just slowly, incrementally changed the UI. And I was like, you should have a party. And he's like, what? And I was like, have a party. Just you're humans that worked on this. It can't be forever in the salt mine changing the UI. Like, even though we know we can do continuous improvement in delivery and development, human beings almost need a ritual of like, we're done, or at least it's a milestone or something. Have a party, say we're done with that redesign and move on, because that was what was killing the morale. Like, when's it done? What is happening? Right.
We
Well,
also,
that's
because we go ahead.
it's something that's actually bothered me
Everyone had one.
about like as we transition and we came up with these words like sprint, like the whole, like, here's the thing, right? If you
Continuous
anything
sprinting.
about running,
You're
right?
supposed to stop.
When you sprint, right? You're not supposed
That's what
to
makes it
pick
a
up
sprint.
and do it
Yes.
again right after you finish that.
No, that's just long distance running really
Right?
fast.
Yeah. And it's like,
Checkpoint, grab a water, keep going.
yeah, I was like, I've always been like, I've had clients ask me, like, as we implemented it, like, well, what's supposed they latch on to this idea. It's like, oh, I get continuous work, right? I'm just like, yeah, that's why this is not going to work for me and my team. Cause it's like, I'm not saying we should stop and not get paid, right? But we should stop and recognize.
Yeah.
We should slow down, right?
You say, 2-week sprint? Does that mean we get 1 week off? I'm
Right.
the worst person on these teams. I said that lot, and they just look at you like, no, another 2-week sprint. I'm like, well, then we're not sprinting. We're doing a long marathon just really fast.
Although, actually, see, that's what we've ended up with. But what you were supposed to do is you were supposed to sprint, then you were supposed to stop,
Plan.
do some experimentation, then sprint again. And you might have a couple of sprints in there, but then you stop, and that stopping thing is this thing that we stopped doing.
Yeah, because why am I paying people to sit around?
Right. Because and this this is one of the things that I preach so much when I'm working with teams and when I'm working with leaders that don't understand infrastructure and ops teams. And this is just as true with software teams, but they accept, usually if they're talking to me, they've gotten to the point where they accept that they don't understand how the people that work in ops work. Right.
Yeah, they don't.
So I have a little bit of room here that I can say this. And that is, you have to put air in the schedule. If all you do is give them work, they're never going to have time to spend in their heads thinking about improvements and fixes.
Mhm.
You have to put air in their schedules. And this is just as true for your software.
Yeah, and you're doing that because this other thing that, like, again, you're pushing on one part of the balloon and another thing pops up that we talked about this before, start talking about this thing called technical debt. And what is this? This is made up.
That's
But it's just the
everything
team.
you've ever written.
It's the team there is no such thing. There's just the code you wrote, and that's it. This pretend world where there was a
The
better
only day you don't have
time,
tech
yeah,
debt,
right? Yeah,
the
exactly.
only day you don't have tech debt is the day you have not written any code
But-
yet.
Yeah, but it is a blinking red light that says
And then
we
you
need
have
to
other
rest.
people's tech
Yeah.
debt because you got something you're starting
Yeah.
with.
So I tell people, you want to get rid of tech debt, give your team some downtime, and then they're like, to work on the tech debt. I'm like, no, I didn't say you give them the downtime to work on the tech debt. You give them the downtime, and then tech debt, poof, vanishes. Like it's like a thing that never really
There are
existed.
things they want to do. There are things they want to fix. You don't have to make him do it. You have to give them the opportunity.
Yeah. Sprinting also, the funny part is when you're working on stuff that doesn't make sense, is you've had to commit to in some agile thing. Makes you feel like it's like a bunch of drag assing on something that's supposed to be a sprint. It's amazing when you let people work on what they believe is the right thing that they want to work on and are qualified to, or train some people and show them. All of a sudden, everyone's sprinting and you didn't have to do anything.
Yep.
Magic. Magic. Right? Like magic. Like what? Anyway, I've been on this large corporate. I'm glad that I don't know if that's still going on at big places where they do all the agile and stuff, but they're still doing it.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just seems like,
I mean, and Scrum, it's Scrum Masters are still a thing. There's still an entire industry around Scrum Masters, right? And I mean, it's devolving and falling apart, but it's still there. There's still a solid baseline of it, but then those get replaced by the next thing. And I'm sorry, James, I'm going to pick on you. Less, right? Large scale Scrum.
Right.
The next thing, right? One of the next things is this is how we do Scrum in large organizations.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same shit.
It's really just it's really just about figuring out how to get from point A to point B to point C all the way through the alphabet and cycle it over again because we don't ever finish shipping.
Well, this is, again, the key to here, which I've had to spend a lot of time working on and thinking about because it's like a barrier. This is one of the things you arrive at the bottom. We don't understand the fundamental nature of working on computers. What is it we do, or what like when you say you're like, I need you to commit to this sprint. I'm like, we don't even understand what it means to do work, or like, are we like, what is happening on the computer? Who is doing it? What makes it the thing? Like, why are you giving me checks? And what is it that I'm doing? I'm not shoveling. And then on top of it, going back to the earlier thing, when we were talking about delivery versus consulting, imagine a scenario of one person digging the hole and another person with a clipboard next to him. There's kind of even a modality of like, there's the work and there's what we know about the work. And we all know that if you do the work and no one knew about it, then did you do the work at all? And this is that sort of management of work versus the actual heavy lift. And this on computers, and people just don't even understand.
Pull that up another layer and back to the strategy and the business part. What happens so many times in these teams, and the Instagram UI is a good example, that why are we doing it? Because we have engineers that need work to do. And it's not about what was the business case. The engineers are so far decoupled, and the project managers standing there with the clipboards watching people dig, right, are so far decoupled from why are we digging a hole.
They're tracking, but
they're like, our responsibility is to dig holes and make sure holes are dug and make sure we get 7 holes an hour dug or whatever it is. And they don't know why.
Well, that should be the person with the clipboard is the two-way street. When I say that this is not about computation, cycles per minute, or programming, this is actually more about information, right? Like communication and information are the keys to getting this stuff done. Because in some ways, it is the work didn't happen if no one knew it happened. And it's even further if it happened and we do know it happened, but it wasn't semantically important to us, or then it really didn't, it was bad. And on top of that, what's the value?
Yeah.
And so you get into just how to quantify the work, how to measure and communicate it. Me or someone like Burgess would say a reduction in uncertainty is how you're measuring.
Teams actually stop working sometimes, right? Our engineering teams. If we would say, oh, you know what? April, we stop working till the end of July. Let's just do it. See what happens, right? Then the rest of the business can go, why are we trying to ship features? Continuously ship features? If we can't ship between April and July, then
you just turned it off, like the whole performance.
Can we still run our business? If we can't, then it was important. If we can, maybe. Not that we need to fire the engineers. We need them, right? This isn't about reducing workforce. This is about understanding that your people don't have to be 100% or 110% committed every day, of their career working for you. And the reality is they're not.
Right. No, here's the thing. Like
they will find ways for this to not happen.
Yeah.
Because humans can't do it.
I agree. Pausing work would be like a baseline of because the whole thing, Agile, DevOps, all this stuff, everything we do is about reducing uncertainty about what's happening. That's really that information layer. If you stop, everyone's not working. What you've done now, we're 100% certain that this is what's happening, and it's providing maybe no value. But actually, David, you might be right. That might have been an enormous amount of value because we've reduced uncertainty. And now we know what happens now. We will know without a shadow of a doubt that it's certain they're doing this, or it's certain that this is important, or whatever. And so I think that this is the main theme people need to kind of understand is with computers and IT and application and all that stuff, it's like the whole part we're trying to solve is certainty. I mean, Burgess is right. He wrote a whole book about it. It's called The Search for Certainty. This is Mark Burgess's contribution saying, look, we've already figured out what we're trying to do. And then all these different things to try to do that are interesting. But maybe the most radical thing you could say is it's not that we want them working or not working. It's that we want to be certain of what they're doing and then baseline there and go back up. Agile just kind of makes it worse, where at some point you're just in some pathology again where the system, it's more about what if the holes are being dug and all that, completely disjointed from why. This is not good because it's creating more uncertainty. And even worse, this shadow work, shadow IT, where, yeah, I'm fully committed, but I'm just off actually figuring out how to use the cloud or use the things we're not allowed to use. That's not tracked at all. And now that's even more uncertain, right? And like, who knows? And so, like, when you have an outage on the system, okay, this happens in IT. The shadow IT system is having an outage. And no one even knows about that, but somehow everyone's worried about like, wait, what happened?
Like,
why can't we
like
deploy?
what happened
Why
a
is
few weeks
production
back
down?
when Google's authentication went down and like half of everything on the internet stopped working.
This is the thing. So you'll find it eventually, right? It'll become certain at some point again, but not when you want it to be. Like I definitely didn't know that most of my team was working on this thing that wasn't tracked. I thought we were paying all these Agile coach and all these commits were there, but none of this related to the real work.
Well, I think I tend to agree with what you're saying, Stephen. And I think I would frame the words to business people a little bit differently, right? Because when you start talking about certainty and uncertainty, but to business people who want to keep this like arm's length distance from everything, and I don't know why they do it as business owners and CEOs and executives, but they do. It starts getting uncomfortably close to therapy for them, right? And so you got to couch it in terms that they're going to understand as an executive. So what I usually, the terms I would use is it's all about mitigation of risk, right? That's what it really boils down to. In my opinion, everything boils down to the businesses are everything that these business people are doing is an attempt to mitigate risk. Whether or not they are actually aware of what the risks are, the true risks are, is a completely different story.
Yeah.
Right. And just like I can develop software to solve a problem that nobody has. A lot of these business people can sit there and go, I'm trying to mitigate a risk that we don't even have.
Yep. And this is also balanced. That's in my world, the sort of what we've been calling DevOps. There is actually two sides: the mitigating risk in relation to shipping value, shipping innovation, shipping the thing of the thing, like the actual value of the business. It's a bit of a differential equation where people think, oh, to move fast and break things and do the innovation, we have to like sacrifice risk mitigation. If you're on the outside, you're like, shut those cloud accounts down. There's no safety, right? And so, but is it a differential equation or are they even related? These are the things that like, do you have to sacrifice security to move fast? I mean, the whole people miss the point. Like, it's not a differential equation. You could have both. Why not both? Right? Like, move fast, break, and don't break things, including the law. Right? Don't do that. You can potentially, but I think David's saying the more thing is that there's different kinds of stuff. Risk mitigation, if you say things like things that should be stable, lots of uncertainty in those is bad, right? So you want to mitigate the risk. So I would totally pay David to come in and make me feel better and more certain about things, or not even he's telling me the things that I was wondering. He helps me build tools and process that help me reduce uncertainty. So Dave, like this sort of like when you're consulting, it's more of how do I think about it and what processes are the ones helping me be better. Not, and then on topic, delivering that is different, right? Like this is better instrumentation of what's going on, including hiring a consultant to come in and not tell you what the truth is, but help you develop the truth finder kind of thing, like this sort of meter. Your thermostat's been lying to you, is what we come in and say. Well, what should I set it to? I don't know. Like only you know that. Well, should we set the thermostat like Google last year? No, that
Well, that
doesn't
one's
help
set
you.
to 79.
Yeah.
No, it's set to 77. It thinks it's 79. Right above it's a thermostat, a thermometer that says it's 76.
Yeah.
Oh,
that
here
was
on my desk, it's 74.
You need a
Who knows?
thermostat for your thermostat. Like, where does this end, right? Like, this is kind of the thing. But risk mitigation mixed with the sort of innovation value delivery is the conundrum. This is
Right.
the tension. It's kind of like me saying without physics and police, I'm unstoppable, right? Yeah, of course, right? But
The the risk part of this always makes me think about, so in our video game world, and this was so different than almost any other company, but I often use this as an example when talking to a team, because they often don't really understand the impact of anything that they're running, right? The impact to their business. And so we go through this exercise of we turn your database off. What happens?
Hey, the unplug thing. Like, if I unplug this server, who calls?
If I little Bobby tables, and they're gone, right? Or somebody drops a dev database, but it was actually on production. This all happened. I mean, this happened to Living Social. Somebody shared an example in CTO lunches last week about a time that they dropped production database.
Or the AI is dropping it for you.
And then there was the AI drop. That was what triggered it last week, was the AI is dropping it for you. But like in the video game world, in my video game world, we had this conversation a couple of times as we think about what backups and restores. We do backups. We would make sure that we have restorable backups from databases, right? We have, intensive version control of everything that goes into this, but we wanted to always understand the risk, because we did once screw it up hardcore, and we had to roll it back a week.
Yeah, like the backup of your backup didn't work, or it's like that
because we didn't know what broke. We didn't know what broke for a week, so we had to go back to a week-old backup.
Yeah.
Now, this was completely safe for us because our authentication system was a totally different ecosystem, well-tested, bomb-proof ecosystem. I mean, I'm sure they screwed it up just like the rest of us, but the authentication system, how all of our users were managed, how all of the money was managed, was independent of this part of the system. So we had that, though they treated their applications like they were business critical. We treated ours like they were video games. And in a video game, if it goes offline for a week, you know what happens when you turn it back on? People go, yay!
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they're pissed off, you know how you solve it? They say, I didn't get to play my game for a week, and I lost a week's worth of game progress. What you do is you give them money. They go, oh, shoot, I've got things I can buy in the game. Sweet.
Yep.
And now they're happy again. Do your business users operate that way? No. So you probably shouldn't operate your production databases like the video game databases. We have to think about all of these things and couch it in the terms of what our business is capable of sustaining. But it's also why early stage startups shouldn't bother with backups.
No, like they don't value that the same way as a Liberty Mutual or someone. They just don't.
Well, how much does it cost you? Well, it costs us our one customer. What do they pay?
Yeah, they're not making any money. Yeah.
What am I going to do? Put 4 engineers on this for the next 6 months? No way.
It's like, we're going to spend more than we make on a lock on the box where the money's at. That's empty.
Sorry, let's start over again.
Yeah. That's always the key when we're talking to people about risk and stuff, like, especially if you have new software or something, they'll go, well, they ask you all these questions. One of the things I say is, well, do you have 1,000 customers? And they're like, no. And you're like, you like, the people will compare risk to their ideal, not their reality. That's one thing, right?
Jonathan Stark's comic this week, Stitcherville comic, is in this vein, because in the fractional world, in the consulting world, in the advice giving world, right, we often are asked to help with compliance. And so and you said, well, if you come in and ask them, well, why do this, right? This is the why conversation. Part of that why conversation is, why be compliant? Is it you might be fined? Okay. Well, are you going to be fined in this administration? Are you sure you're going to be fined? How often do people get caught? When was the last time somebody issued a fine?
Do you have any money to even
and if they do, how much is that? That fine is going to cost you what, $100,000? 10 grand? $1 billion? What is it? I'm just making up numbers. If you don't know, you shouldn't hire someone to solve this problem for you yet, because there's a cost to solving this problem. Now, if you get them to put those numbers on paper and they go, well, okay, we're looking at $1 billion fine, and that $1 billion fine is like 100 times our revenue, then maybe we should say, and what's the chance of that happening? Well, if it happens, the last time this happened, somebody got this, and good. Now you've got a baseline value to the business of what this is worth. 100%. And now we can talk about how much money you're going to spend to solve this and why I'm really expensive to help you do that.
Yeah. I call it the hot rod to Costco. Like,
Yeah.
is that like, why are we, wait, what? Right? You just
It's
need to go
for
to Costco. Like, why are we
Great.
building?
How much is fun worth for you?
Yeah.
And that's the
F1
other
car,
side of it, though, right? It's not always business value. There's sometimes there's some other value. And it's really important to try to understand what it is that your customer thinks is valuable about this.
Mhm.
Because driving the hot rod to Costco, don't have to.
No, it doesn't
But
even
I
make sense,
can
right? Yeah.
because I want to, and I
Sure.
want to spend that money. Great, let's do it.
Sure. Yeah, right.
But we also can plan accordingly about how we manage risk and all of those things, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, and the other, like, sort of that
It
next
broke down,
meta
so
level,
you take the family
that's what I was
grocery
just gonna, the meta conversation is, I tell people, well, you're asking all these questions about compliance, and I was like, you're doing I said, so you should do some of these things like rule following, compliance, and they're like, what if the compliance like kind of like you should wear a helmet, and they're like, what if the helmet breaks? You're like, man, you're not even wearing, you're unsafe now. This is so when you talk to people, these customers, they always think their current state is the one that they're functioning highly at, or they're having almost a, not dishonest, but Livio said it, almost a, like a not a good faith conversation with you, which is
Right.
they're arguing with you about your recommendations against an ideal, not their actual.
Not their actual.
And you have to break through that, because then you should sense that out. If you're good, you start to sense out, am I being compared to an ideal that you are working? I didn't ask what your goals are in IT. I said, where are you at now? Because otherwise we'll dangerously get into the hot rod to Costco, where you're asking me, well, what if the compliance stuff I do, what if the safety we're adding breaks? And I'm like, last I checked, you don't have any safety. So that's a second order problem we don't need to worry about right now. Like the whole, does it scale? This kind of stuff. And you're like, do you have a scale problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, so on a very micro scale, I've spent quite a lot of time the last 2 weeks, week and a half, playing around with uh, automation, specifically with nan.com. And like, I started with a simple idea. The simple idea was I wanted to use workflows with some input seed information to do generative blog posts and then the social media posts around those blog posts for a given month, because I like to know what I'm putting up. I like editing the content and stuff like that. But if I just do it all on my own, it takes me a day, a whole day. Whereas if I automate it, I can really trim that off. And I've had a ton of success with it. But as I was doing it, more things crept in.
Right.
Like, am I really, are the themes I'm using for this really targeting my audience correctly, and so on and so forth. This led to more higher order stuff. And as I got into it the last couple days, I was like, you know what? All these things are good, but I haven't finished out the main thing I wanted to get out of this. Right. So I have this whole thing that's like, these pieces are unfinished, a bunch of pieces that are unfinished and nothing that's actually finished. And businesses are doing that every single day.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
There's
they're
a
talking
valid-
up to the idea of, well, software's never done.
There's valid value in experimentation. And sometimes experimentation means doing and trying and finding out, right? And that, but be honest about it. Be honest with yourself about it and say, I'm doing this not because I think my automation that I'm doing for N8N is something that's going to solve world hunger or that I can sell to the next client or something like that, but that this is an experiment. I'd like to learn how these tools work. I'd like to learn if this helps me. I would like to. The experiment is, can I reduce the toil that gets me from here, from the idea of an article to a posted in 3 or 4 platforms, with some automation to pull stats back and populate a spreadsheet or whatever, or a graph, is like, that would help me out because it would save me a day. Now, but the experiment is, can I even make this work? Can I spend 6 weeks building it? Or is it
save a day, right? Yeah.
Am I going to iterate on this for the next 6 years? And so you invest some time in it and say, okay, at the other end of this, I go, do I continue or do I not? Or did I learn something in this that is completely new that I
Right.
didn't even think about?
So you're touching on so automation is the hot, but we should talk about this next time. But if you were saying I could automate this thing that would save me an hour a day, and you start working on it, this gets into that nature of the agile and whether it's done. There's some things like what's interesting about, say, a good example is the Phoenix project, where one of the biggest risks in technology is work in progress, is work at risk, right? Whether you're building an app or doing that. But then that sort of relies on there being this idea that it's in progress. Well, where's the end, right? There's this thing that, like, if you look at philosophers, like technology philosophers like Gilbert Simondon, there's this process of becoming, and then there's sort of this part where all of a sudden the parts become the whole, and it sort of, you see the technical object. That's kind of a good milestone where you're saying it is actually giving me the hour back. That's done. But if I didn't hit that yet, and I'm still in that other thing, that's work in progress and risk. So it takes a really expert eye where you're starting. Plus, I got to say Simondon on the call, but it takes an expert eye to sort of notice between, are we working in progress or are we done? And you know what I mean? There's what is this? What is done? But there are places where you see this is more or less hitting the goals we set. It doesn't feel like we're in the middle of everything's like on the table workshopping. That's the kind of thing where, like, any pull requests that are halfway done, you never even got close. You didn't hit any of the objectives. How to measure those? It's not certain. I think this is, again, certainty. It's certain that it's more certain that we're seeing the automation saving us the hour, or it's less certain is one of those ones where that one is the dangerous. We can't spend another 2 weeks without any indication that this is going to automate the thing, right, Michael? Like, that, we know that it's so hard to measure them. It's very hard for people to see, and you get passion. They see it again in their ideal, but they're not seeing the actual work. I'm so close. I can almost taste
Why
it.
is this taking so long?
Yeah, and then you say, "Why is this taking so?" I'm almost there. Oh, we've heard this story, right?
I mean, I'm 90%, and they're like, "Oh, great."
90% of what, right? Like, yeah.
90% is just still, you've got 9 more percent before you get to the hard part.
Yeah, and then that 1% that takes 10,000%, right? Like, we say this all the time. First, we got to do the 99, and now we'll do
Which
the
is
one.
why it's so important to figure out how to scope differently and be able to accept
Yeah.
imperfect.
If you knew that point, like Simondon talks about, if you knew that point that it switches from a bunch of stuff, like a vacuum tube parts and the vacuum tube, if you knew where that was and could just go there, like, you're the king of everything, right? But that's the whole point with technical objects, and that point of becoming, and they call it concretization or concreteness, when it switches from not just a bunch of parts on the ground and I can assemble it and, like, shoot a gun. When that happens, that is the hardest thing to see for us, for technical, that thing. And sometimes you just got to take a break and, like, come back, and then all of a sudden everyone's calling it the pipeline. And I'm like, I just see a bunch of Jenkins and BS. I don't know
then
why.
you spent the last 18 months building that engine, and now you've got it running and driving, and you're like, now what do I do?
Yeah. Well, that.
Yeah,
Let me know when you hit that. Yeah.
I actually think
like,
that's
next?
that concept
Monitoring's
right there.
What's next?
I think that concept right there, David, is the source. It is one of the primary sources of most, like, in my world, developers release anxiety.
Yeah.
Right. Because,
Like painters, right? When's the
like,
painting
I just
done?
don't want to let it go. You
No,
know,
it's your project.
For a variety of different reasons, and it comes down to, things like, fear of what the next thing is, or, fear that it works perfectly for me, but it doesn't work for anybody else.
Yeah.
You got you're gonna have bugs, things like that.
Yeah. Building
And-
versus
and-
polishing, right? Building versus polishing.
Which is
right, and we
different people, and why we have teams that have different roles, and
right.
I'm just like, done. Like the chef, there's the plate. Watch The Bear or something. Like, the chef's gonna sit there like, it's not perfect. The plating person's like, they ordered, we got 4 minutes. I'm taking this out, or you got to remake
done
it.
or not.
Like, there's another person we give that to, and this is like sort of that agile. Like, again, the person with the clipboard is where this comes from, right? Like, the business value isn't polishing this thing to your degree, Michael. I mean, you could say that in your contract, like, I would like an open-ended slush fund for me to polish as much as I want when this is done. No, they're not going to give you that. They're going to go somewhere. You're basically making some agreement to where they can take this from you, rip it from your arms, your baby, right? and then do what, like, that's theirs now. It's
No, I think
hard. It's very hard.
it is, and I think years ago I got used to the idea. I'm the person who, you see all the Legos behind me, right? Like, I'm the guy who builds this, and then I've got the Shire on the floor behind me that you can't see. I'm like, I'm ready to go on to the next one. Like, I wanted that tower to be done so I could move on to the
Yeah.
to the aircraft that's carrying it. Like,
So you were fungible about done was like, all right, we're done, right? Like much more clear and concise.
yeah, like, and Lego's a little bit easier because you got each bag, so you know how far along you are and things like that, right? On real create on and that the software development industry is a creative industry. I don't care what people think, you know, they try to make it engineering, but it's a creative industry. And every creative effort I've been in, once I've answered all the questions that I'm satisfied, we're there.
Mhm.
I'm ready to go to the next thing.
There's
Right?
some
I'm
real
ready to delegate
science.
that off,
Yeah.
hand it off.
Yeah.
Hey, if there's something more that's needed, let's talk about it. But this is ready to go. Like, I've always wanted to be on to the next challenge.
There's
And
some.
I think
Oh,
you see some of that mentality in our industry, but I think the mentality is more geared towards once I've got my fingers into something, I'm never going to let it go.
right. There's some. I think that there's, not to say that it's some elusive sort of intangible thing. There's some real science about how our brains interpret wholeness. Like, there's like the Gestalt sort of theory of figure versus ground. Like, at what point do our brains know that this thing now is the hive, not the individual bees? How that has to do with phase sometimes and things, even with our own brains and all this stuff. So there's actually like some science to knowing when a technical object is more whole and done. But there's also the whole fun of, as you said, it's creative. The whole Gestalt thing was the creativity of playing with that. You're looking at something, all of a sudden you see a tiger, right? Like, whoa. And the AI kind of has this same vibe, just stare into the thing until you see that. In some ways, that's what we're doing with our tech and our code is, in some ways, you're staring into a bunch of random bits, moving shit around, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, I see a tiger, right, or a bear or whatever. And this is very interesting, but it is something that I think can get wrong. Like you said, junior engineers just keep polishing. Maybe it's already there, or I don't see it. With the DevOps, it's still this thing where people are not able to see the thing. It's still very unclear, and that means it's just a discussion. Like, there's really not a thing. It's not a something you see. It's weird.
Yep.
I gotta go.
Yeah, well, we should probably wrap it up.
Awesome discussion. Sorry, I was just yell about this all day.
I hear you. So next week, same time, same channel.
Yeah.
Hope to see everybody. We'll
Cool.
do it again.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Steven.
Bye.